guys, welcome back to another video. So we're gonna go ahead and get straight into sketching today, because for today's sketch with me, I did want to do kind of what I consider like a sketch page. It's just basically a bunch of doodles all compiled into one canvas, but I don't compile them from like different drawing sessions. I basically do it in a way that's like you kind of fit different either figures or drawings into certain different spaces as you move along the canvas, which I find kind of fun. I am going to be approaching this one in particular a little bit differently. So usually I don't plan any of my sketch page kind of spreads all that much. I would usually draw one thing, finish that sketch like without color, and then move on to the next sketch. But for this one in particular, I am going to be using my painting brush, which is a lot thicker. It has like a little bit less tapering, and for the most part I like using it to, besides painting, I like using it to block in like my composition or my figures or whatever I like to do that requires a little bit more planning, but I want to keep things still like quite general and not specific. So for this one, I am going to be drawing the 17 members. So if you don't know who 17 is, they are a K-pop group. There are 13 members in that group, but today I'm only going to be drawing about 6 of them just because of how I formatted the sketch page in this kind of way. I only had enough space for about 6 of them. So I believe my canvas size is a kind of like A4 size piece of paper kind of size. So it's like 8.5 by 11. And then I have it kind of more horizontally longer, and then the resolution's about 300. So for the sketch page, I knew that I wanted to draw different little parts from the music video. So to give a little bit of context, by the time this video comes out, I believe on Monday, yes, Monday or like Sunday night, they have a new album coming out. That came out. I guess I should talk about it in the present tense. So 17 has a new album that just came out recently, and their music video is called, I think it's God of Music in English. So the music video is very like upbeat, it's very cheerful, very warm, very cute, and it's just like, it gives me a lot of like healing, very happy vibes from it. So I really wanted to draw something that's a little bit more fun, and I feel like sketch pages for me are a little bit more freeing. I also can play around with the colors, but also just knock out a bunch of sketches without having to commit to one thing and like having to finish it from like, you know, sketch to full render by the end of it. I am planning potentially, I don't know if for a video or if I'm going to do it in my spare time, that I want to draw some screenshot redraws, I guess is the better way of saying it, from the music video. So I basically screenshotted it because I was waiting. I was like, it's like 4 a.m. when I think the music video came out my time, so mountain time, and when it came out I was like, you know, watched the music video a couple of times. I was listening to the album, and as I was listening to the album, I was screenshotting stuff in the music video so that I could have some references to draw from. But I feel like, especially for K-pop fan artists, a lot of the times we end up doing like redraws of the members or of like whatever they're promoting at the time, because it's fun to see people draw either like scenes from music video or like promotional photos, or just like if you watch reality shows with them in it or anything, you know, like any kind of visual media. It's kind of fun to interpret that in your own style, but then so many people do it that it's fun to see what each member looks like in everybody's style, and it's kind of just a fun way. I know like a lot of people don't like doing like redraws for something like that, but I feel like it's fairly common among like a lot of K-pop fan artists, if anything. So yeah, basically all the things I'm going to be drawing are kind of like based off of the references or the screenshots that I did take from the music video. They're not going to be 100% accurate just because I'm taking some stylistic choices or, you know, some liberties there. But for the most part, if you are interested, I'll have the music video linked in the description if you would like to listen to it or watch it. I highly recommend giving their mini album a listen. I think it has like very good variety of song choices, and for the most part, this is like what I consider 17's general vibe, I guess, that I feel like a lot of carats absolutely love. They tend to have like a brighter sounding music, or very comforting, very healing, very upbeat. I don't know. It's something like how I feel like a lot of carats clown on this because of like since debut. It's kind of more like funky sound sometimes. So it's like something I've really missed. And I feel like the last few comebacks that we had were a little bit more mature sounding, which is absolutely fine and great. And I still like those songs. But there's something that I gravitate towards 17's more like upbeat, happier songs. Now, with that being said, my favorite tracks on this particular album are the last two. I guess it's second from the last one, I guess, and the third from the last one, because the last song on their album is technically the instrumental. So I do apologize, by the way. I know some people who watch my videos are not carats, and I haven't been drawing 17 a lot, so I'm probably alienating a few people in my viewers in terms of when I talk about 17 or just K-pop in general. I promise I'll get back to actually talking about the artwork in a little bit, and just like the general idea of drawing more things kind of like in a sketch page way, or like what I like to deem as a sketch page, because I know people approach it differently. But back to the 17 album. The song Yawn and Headliner are probably my favorite, and Headliner, I don't know, it feels more comforting. It's a little mellow and kind of upbeat at times. It kind of like fluctuates, which gives me like a lot of like comfort from the song, and I feel like it's like one of those songs that 17 usually has in their album, which feels like it's specifically dedicated to carats, or it's very, I don't know. There's definitely a lot of songs that kind of, I feel, fall into that category of sound that they have for this particular vibe of a song, which I would like just put it under one like umbrella term, which is just very comforting to to listen to. And then the other one, which is the track before it, is called Yawn, and basically 17 always has unit songs. Well, not always. They usually have unit songs. So they have 3 units, which is the hip-hop unit, the performance unit, and the vocal unit. And usually whenever they have unit songs, I feel like 9 out of 10 times will always choose the vocal unit song to be my top song in the album, or just among the 3 units, because they tend to sing more ballady songs, and I am a sucker for ballads. Even like their first unit song in their debut album, which is called 20, it's still like one of my top songs just in general of their entire discography. But that one's like very much more upbeat, very cute, very bubbly sounding, but I think they kind of like turned more towards like a ballad sound for their vocal unit, which totally makes sense because they want to showcase their vocals, but definitely more up my alley in terms of like what genre music I like to listen to a lot. And I love their voices so much. So Yawn is very much like very beautiful sounding, has a wonderful instrumental sound and everything, but also like the vocals are very beautiful. And I don't know, it feels like kind of one of those songs that kind of like hits you in the gut, because like it's a little heart-wrenching, it's a little bit want to wallow in your own sadness kind of thing, if that makes sense. But then right after that you get Headliner, which I feel like after you're done crying you can get like kind of feel more motivated or like uplifted, or like let all that kind of like release all your emotions in that song. So I feel like it was just like a good succession from the different transition from Yawn to Headliner. I'll talk about the other songs a little bit, just because I for anyone who is a carat or getting into 17 or kind of like seldomly listen to 17, do let me know your opinion on like, one, the title track, which is God of Music, and then just the entirety of the album, because I feel like this album is very special to 17 themselves, but also to carats, because there's another reference to another song, but also, I don't know, it feels like they're going a little bit back into their roots a little bit, because it's definitely something I feel like 17 would make music of. Okay, but whatever, I'll get back to the actual sketch page. So in terms of the sketching, so once I've done basically the kind of like guidelines or like the general positioning of what I wanted to draw, then I went ahead, made a new layer, and I switch brushes back to my sketch round brush so that I can actually do the general sketching of everything. So I'm basically doing one member at a time. I tend to start in the bottom left hand corner and kind of fan my way out. So either I will go directly above, I can go diagonally to the upper right, or I'll go like directly to the right so that we can kind of fill up the space. So the reason being is that it kind of helps me keep, I don't know, the spread a little bit interesting, because the way how I place either the character or whatever I'm drawing also depend on the pose a little bit. It kind of like sections off on its own. So the second person that I drew, which is the one with the kind of little hat toque, kind of the one that's basically pointing to the right, his arm, which is Hoshi, he's pointing to the right, and it kind of cuts off nicely. So I can put someone above the arm and I can put someone below the arm. So it's kind of nice to kind of keep things to be broken up in a certain way. And then after that, I can find other places for me to place the other characters or members, or if I want to add text or whatever. It's just a fun way to kind of keep your spread looking a little bit more filled, but not letting it look too cluttered, if that makes sense. Or at least I don't consider it looking too cluttered. Usually because later on we'll put a white outline and then we'll add some text or any effects on top of it, so it kind of feels a little bit more, I don't know, unified in a different way, if that makes sense. So for coloring, once I've finished the sketch, I went ahead, duplicated it so I can have a backup. I switched the sketch to a kind of like a lighter brownish purple color and then set it to multiply. And then after that, make a new layer, the color underneath my sketch, so that we can make sure that the colors do not bleed over. But for at least like the last few drawing sessions that I've been doing, or just drawings in general, I've been mostly doing this method instead, where I'm kind of blocking in the entire figure, or in this case, all the figures on the page in kind of like one solid color, so that you'll see that later on, once I've done filling in the entirety of the figures, I'll go ahead and lock that layer. But in this case, I'm going to change the color first before I lock it. But then after that, we can go ahead and just color without worry of kind of like bleeding out of the lines or where I initially had that blue color. So I went ahead and used the color sliders to go and make the kind of like what I wanted to do for the skin tone. Now, I didn't realize that I made it much brighter and much more yellow forward for the skin tone, which kind of made everything have that little bit more of a yellowy glow in the very end. But I kind of wish I made them a little bit more, not as pale, but also a little bit more on the pink side, just because the background is kind of more of that warm yellowy color anyways. But it's okay. Like I said, once we put the white outline over it, it kind of makes them stand out from the background, so it's kind of fine. So I'm starting with Dogyam, which is the one on the very left bottom, and that's the one that I started to draw first. So basically, I'm going to kind of color them one by one and make sure to shade how I want to. Now, because they're not from the same scene or have the same lighting, I'm going to make sure that I kind of treat them all separately in a way. So usually when I do sketch pages like this, I like to sketch them all separately without planning the entire thing. But then I also don't care about color either. So if you care about color, you can probably prep that beforehand and try to think like, oh, if too many people have blue, then I want to separate them all. Or if you want to have like more continuity or unity for any of your pieces, then you can definitely do that beforehand. But the way how I treat kind of these sketch pages is very loose, and I don't really care about too much about composition, too much about making things look accurate or clean. So even when we get to the rendering stage, I'm not going to end up rendering to the full extent. And later on, I'll show you like brief examples of what I used to do for my 17 sketch pages. Oh, I should have probably mentioned this earlier. The reason why I consider these more like sketch pages, even though it's just like a canvas filled with a bunch of sketches or doodles or whatever, I used to do, well, I kind of still do this, but I feel like I haven't done it as much because I tend to I guess like limit myself to a number of drawings that I fit on a spread in my sketchbook. So basically, in the past, when I had a sketchbook habit and I drew a lot of the 17 members, I would oftentimes just sketch usually from the bottom left, and kind of like I said, fan out to either the top right, or just like the right of the left sketch. And I would do that in my sketchbook a lot, so I would just utilize whatever space that I had and just drew and filled up the space to the best of my ability, so that I can, one, use the entire real estate of the paper, and then two is that I'm not capable of basically like shuffling around any of my drawings in my sketchbook. And I feel like digitally I do have that option, and you can see that I pre-planned the kind of like the figures and the composition a little bit this time when I usually don't. And that basically stems from the fact that how I used to sketch, kind of any pencil doodling session or whatever, I would fill the sketchbook in that way. Even like previous sketchbook doodles video, even if I'm doing like water-based markers, I kind of fill it in that same way, where I'll put one figure down and then you start to fill up the space around them. And I don't really care if there's like the body gets cut off because someone's arm's in the way or whatever. I kind of treat it as, you know, if their arm's in the way, that's kind of like a little barrier, and then I will just have to draw around it. And I feel like this is a very normal way of drawing things like that, but I know some people do section off their doodles and drawings a little bit differently. I do like keeping them at least kind of cohesive in a way, so like either tying them with a medium, tying them with a color scheme or something, because visually I like what it looks like. But for digital, because there's more like opportunity to play around with color, and I don't really care how vibrant things are or how much contrast there is, I kind of just render them all individually, if that makes sense. Like, I don't really care. But when I'm like working in my sketchbook, I feel like I care a little bit too much about the entire aesthetic of the spread, which I feel like might be quite evident in the way how I treat my sketchbook sometimes for sketchbook doodles. Like, I would pick, at least more recently, like in the last 2.5 years-ish, I tend to pick like maybe up to 4 colors, and I would only stick with those 4 colors because I want more of a cohesive looking spread, or I'll use the same medium across the entire spread so that nothing looks too out of place. But before I get too sidetracked, we are now basically done with kind of like what I consider the rough coloring stage. So I went ahead and locked my sketch so that we can color individual lines, so we can kind of adjust the how bright or how dark, or if I want things to appear softer. So alpha locking just allows me to not basically like color out of the lines from where my sketch was. So you can see that I made a lot of the areas near the center of the face a little bit more orangey, a little bit more red, light, and kind of a little bit lighter. But near like the corners of their mouths, I made them quite darker. I changed the eye color this way as well, because I made them basically just solid black dots with a white circle in the middle. So I went ahead and changed them all to be purple and added more of a lighter purple color for like a little half circle at the bottom, just to give it a little bit more color. And I tend to do this for a lot of my sketch pages, or at least I think I do, is that I tend to simplify the eyes a lot. It allows me to draw a little bit quicker without having to be like, which way is the character looking? I have to make sure like they have a pupil, make sure they have a highlight, or whatever you want. I feel like it's just too much detail for so many characters on one page. I feel like it's a little unnecessary. So having simpler eyes just makes sure that, you know, the eyes stand out in a way that doesn't make it feel like everything's like too tiny, too hard to see. I don't know. Maybe it's me, but like I also don't really like adding like tiny doodles. Like the smallest I probably will go, unless I'm doing like little chibis or like derp versions in the canvas or whatever, would probably be the one on the bottom right, which is like Jonghan laying down. Now, I do apologize for anyone who is a carat, that if the way how I draw the members isn't as recognizable. I feel like I'm getting a little bit rusty from how much I've kind of not drawn 17 in a while, just because, like I said, I've been kind of trying to separate my love for 17 and my relationship to drawing, just because I got into a weird place where I would draw to keep up with whatever 17 was doing at the time. So like, you know, if they had a promotional shoot where it's like they're doing modeling or for a product advertisement, I would want to draw fan art of that so that I can post it. You know, then you get to have more carrots, and the carrots would understand, oh, this is from this because this is what I saw recently. And like context wise, it makes sense and it's more relevant. But as I've been getting slower and slower with drawing because I've been putting more time into it, or I kind of separate my sketching time, and like, you know, like the way you delegate how much you can draw in a day gets shorter and shorter, I feel like. So because I haven't been able to keep up with posting as frequently, I didn't want everything that I did post to be super slow and then only be of 17, which I feel like sometimes makes me feel like, oh, the only thing you draw suddenly becomes irrelevant because you spent so much time. So much time has passed that no one's gonna care about what you drew, which is a bad mindset to have, like, in general, because you should just draw for yourself. And I know that people who post stuff to social media, obviously if you're posting to social media, you're trying to, in a way, garner some kind of attention, regardless if it's like you want people to look at your art, you want people to talk to you, whatever is your reason. So I know that's like part of it. So you can't say like, oh, I only post art to social media because I want to and I don't care if no one sees it. Because if you care that no one sees it, then you don't have to upload it directly to social media. You could probably just upload it to your Google Drive, if that makes sense. But so we don't talk about more like negative things. Let me jump back into the sketch page a little bit, then I'll probably end the little conversation or a voiceover for today with a little bit more 17 album talk and just like general 17 stuff that I kind of missed and things I need to catch up on in general. So as I'm kind of working on the sketches, I've been kind of working in the same order that I basically drew them in, and I'm going ahead and, like I said, I'm treating them as their own individual drawing, but because they're collectively they are sketches, I am not putting my full effort into making sure that things are clean, super clear, or like super sharp and cleaned up and everything. I'm just gonna do enough so that they stand out on their own, but also, you know, there's some things that I need to fix. So like some of their face proportions might be a little bit wonky, so I'll liquefy it. Maybe I want hair strands to stand out, so I'll darken those. I'll fix the face a little bit here and there so that, you know, I don't hate any of my sketches. Because one thing I don't like when I do these kind of sketch pages is having only one sketch that you like and everything else you feel is quite mediocre. I do like when you enjoy all the sketches that you've done. So sometimes I do accidentally put too much effort into one and then the other ones feel like they're subpar. But I feel like today, for today's session anyways, they all turned out cute in their own way. I definitely think that Dogyam's my favorite. I do like the one that I'm currently working on, which is of Dino or Channy. And then June's was also very fun. And June, so that's the one with the red hair in the upper right hand corner. He was the one that I wanted to draw in the very first place, besides Joshua probably, in the very beginning of God of Music's kind of scene and stuff. He's just standing in front of this beautiful sky. And I don't know, there's so many screenshots that I would like to do like an actual redraw, so maybe I'll do that for next week because I don't want it to be just a 17 filled week, and I might do it for next Wednesday's video. We'll see what happens. But basically went ahead and kind of just spruced them up, like I said, just to a certain extent where I feel like, you know, they don't look too sketchy, but they're obviously not too finished either because a lot of the sketch lines are still very apparent. Yeah, I didn't take a lot of time trying to fix them all up to make them like super clean. I'm also going to add a white outline to everything. I'm going to add a little bit of text and some extra, like one extra doodle. Sometimes when I do these sketch pages, I end up adding like what I consider like deco stickers or anything on top. So you would draw like little doodles everywhere, put a white outline, and then I would put a drop shadow so it looks like it's sitting on top of the canvas. And this is something fun to do because it makes everything feel extra more like doodly in that sense, or very sketchy, very fun and playful. So sometimes I like doing that. In terms of the other songs on the album though, we did have SOS, which I believe is a completely English song, so like entirely sung in English, and I really like that one a lot. It's also produced by Marshmello, so that's very cool that they got to collaborate with them. And then after that's God of Music, and then after that it's Diamond Days. So Diamond Days is very much like what feels like the sequel of Shining Diamond, which is technically their first song that 17 had when they debuted, technically. So it's kind of like a nice throwback, and like I said, it's kind of like a treat for carrots because it does have some references to Shining Diamond, which I think is very, I don't know, it just feels very nostalgic because of that. And then after that we have Back to Back, which is the performance unit song, and I really like the song and sound in general for the performance unit, because the performance unit sometimes they feels like they have more like of a sensual kind of more, not instrumental, but there's definitely a certain sound that they have, which I think works really well because they are the performance unit, and I really do like that sound. But this one feels a little bit more different, and I feel like we get to hear a little bit more of a different side of their vocal range, which is kind of cool. And then after that is Monster, which is the hip-hop unit song. So if you want like truly like kind of like funkier music or like something really different, listen to Monster. I really like the song. It's very fun, this is a very fun song for like kind of the autumn or Halloween season. And I think that's basically it for the songs. So yeah, I highly recommend you listen to the album, but if not, just listen to God of Music. I think the lyrics are very cute and very uplifting. Yeah, if you can, listen to the lyrics for all of them, or like read the lyrics for all of them. I really do like the lyrics for 17 songs quite a bit. Let me see. Oh, okay, so as we're talking about the time lapse, or I'm showing you guys the time lapse, I'm going to talk about the method of adding the white outline. I know a lot of people have done this, and some people were trying to explain it to me, but I have only recently utilized how to do it properly. So basically, when you have an object and you want to add like a white outline, you basically duplicate your object, then you do a Gaussian blur to a certain thickness so that you kind of have like a halo around your object. After that, use the selection tool and select around your object, and you would use like the automatic version. And then you would invert your selection and then fill with white. So that's kind of like how you would do a white outline. So I think that's the only method you can make like a white outline in Procreate, but I thought it was going to be more complicated, so I probably will use this more in the future anyways. Also, I'm moving it down to 17 sketch pages in my folder, and this is what my previous sketch pages kind of look like. So well, I'll show you guys a few more. I forgot to do one thing, and usually I do this before I actually color, is that I like adding a little grid to the background. So you can find this in textures. It's a default brush in Procreate, and it's just a grid pattern, so don't lift up your pencil if you don't want to have weird overlaps. And I like putting the grid because it makes it feel like grid paper, which makes it, at least for me, helps with the idea of like sketching or doodling a little bit. So put that in the background, put a quick drop shadow, and I think that's it for today's drawing session. I don't remember if I show you guys the other ones. Maybe I do. Yeah, I do. Okay, so basically for other sketch pages, this is like apparently the most recent one that I did. So sometimes I put the grid, sometimes I don't, but you can see the method of just kind of overlapping the drawings like this. But that's it for today's video, and I'll talk to you guys next time in the next video. Bye!